I showed up at my sister's house unexpectedly to surprise her. She was sleeping on the doormat wearing torn old clothes. My son wiped his shoes on her and told the guests, "That's our crazy maid." I didn't scream. I took a step forward and everyone froze. Before we continue, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to hear my story. If you're comfortable, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now let me tell you my story. The drive from San Francisco to Oak Ridge took exactly 3 hours and 12 minutes. I knew because I'd timed it on my phone, watching the miles tick by as I navigated through traffic. Then suburbs, then the rolling hills that led to the small town where my sister Linda lived. I hadn't visited in 6 months. 6 months of excuses, of being too busy, of "I'll come next month. I promise." 6 months of phone calls with my nephew Kevin where he'd assure me that Linda was fine, that everything was under control, that I didn't need to worry. "Aunt Margaret, Mom's doing great. You don't need to drive all the way out here. I'm taking good care of her." But something had been nagging at me. A mother's intuition maybe, though Linda was my sister, not my daughter. A CEO's instinct for when something in the numbers didn't add up. A woman's sense that the story I was being told wasn't quite matching reality. So I'd cleared my schedule, something I rarely did, loaded my Mercedes with expensive gifts, and decided to surprise Linda. Surprise visits. I'd learned over 40 years in business were the best way to see the truth of a situation. My name is Margaret Chen, and before I tell you about what I saw when I walked into that house, you need to understand who I am and how I got here. I'm 65 years old, CEO and founder of Chen Technologies, a software company I started in my garage 32 years ago. We went public 15 years ago. Today we employ over 5,000 people and I'm worth approximately $500 million. I've been on the cover of Forbes, featured in Fortune's Most Powerful Women list for the past decade. I speak at conferences, advise startups, sit on the boards of 3 major corporations. People recognize me. In business circles, in tech communities, sometimes just on the street. "Are you Margaret Chen? Can I get a photo?" I'd worked my entire adult life to build this company, this reputation, this influence. But before I was CEO Margaret Chen, I was just Margaret, older sister to Linda, daughter of immigrants who'd worked in restaurants to give us better lives. Linda was 7 years younger than me. When our parents died, first our father from a heart attack, then our mother from cancer. I'd taken care of her, put her through college while running my startup, made sure she was safe, secure, provided for. Linda had married young, to a kind man named David. They'd had one son, Kevin. David had died 5 years ago from complications from diabetes, leaving Linda alone with Kevin, who was 27 at the time. I'd stepped in immediately, bought Linda a house in Oak Ridge, a beautiful 4-bedroom in a nice neighborhood, sent her $5,000 every month to cover expenses, made sure she had everything she needed. Kevin had lived with her, supposedly taking care of her, managing the household. I'd been grateful for that. Grateful that Linda wasn't alone. I'd been so focused on my company, on growth, on shareholders, on quarterly earnings that I'd let family slip to the background. Phone calls instead of visits, money instead of time. Trusting Kevin's updates instead of seeing for myself. That was about to change. The house I'd bought for Linda was in a nice subdivision, tree-lined streets, well-maintained lawns. The kind of neighborhood where families barbecued on weekends and kids rode bikes. I pulled up to the address and felt immediate satisfaction. The house looked good. Fresh paint, manicured lawn, flowers in the beds. The $600,000 I'd spent had been worth it. There were several cars in the driveway and parked on the street. I could hear music and laughter from inside. A party apparently. Good, I thought. Linda's socializing, making friends, living a full life. I grabbed the bags of gifts from my trunk. An expensive cashmere sweater I'd bought for Linda, a beautiful scarf, some gourmet chocolates, and walked to the front door, rang the doorbell. The door opened and Kevin stood there, looking shocked. "Aunt Margaret, what are you doing here?" He looked different than I remembered. Older, harder somehow. He was wearing expensive clothes, designer jeans, a shirt I recognized as costing at least $300. There was a Rolex on his wrist that definitely hadn't been there during my last visit. "I came to surprise Linda," I said, smiling. "Is she here?" "I brought gifts." Kevin stepped out onto the porch, pulling the door mostly closed behind him. This isn't really a good time. We're having a little gathering." "Perfect. I'll join you. I'd love to meet Linda's friends." I moved toward the door. Kevin blocked me. "Aunt Margaret, maybe you should call first next time. Mom's not..." She's not really up for company right now. Something in his tone set off alarm bells. The way he was physically blocking the door, the nervous energy radiating from him. Kevin, let me in. I want to see my sister. It's just that. I pushed past him. I'm not a large woman. 5'4", 120 pounds, but I have presence. 40 years of walking into boardrooms and taking control had taught me that. Kevin stumbled aside and I walked into the foyer. The scene that greeted me will be burned into my memory until the day I die. The house was full of people, young people. Kevin's age, well-dressed, holding cocktails and wine glasses. Music played from expensive speakers. Everyone was laughing, talking, having a good time. It looked like a typical party for young professionals. Nothing unusual, except for the woman lying on the doormat. At first I didn't understand what I was seeing. There was a woman lying motionless on the floor near the entrance, right where people would walk in, right where you'd wipe your feet. She was wearing torn, dirty clothes. Some kind of uniform maybe, but old and stained. Her gray hair was matted and unwashed. She was curled on her side, eyes closed, completely still. People were stepping around her like she was furniture. Like she wasn't even there. And then, as I watched, frozen in horror, one of the guests, a young man in a polo shirt, literally wiped his shoes on her back, scrubbed his feet across her like she was a rug. The woman didn't move, didn't react, just lay there. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. Who was this? Why was there a person lying on the floor? Why were people? And then the woman shifted slightly, and I saw her face. Linda. My sister Linda was lying on the floor, wearing rags while people stepped on her. The room started spinning. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. I opened my mouth but no sound came out. Kevin noticed me staring. He walked over casually, drink in hand, like everything was normal. "Oh, don't mind her," he said, gesturing at Linda with his glass. "That's just our crazy maid." The room went silent. Everyone turned to look. "She sleeps anywhere," Kevin continued, laughing. "We can't control her. She's not right in the head, you know. Dementia or something." A guest, a woman in her 30s, giggled. "Your maid is insane, Kevin. Why do you even keep her around?" Kevin shrugged. "Free labor. Plus she's entertaining. You should see her try to remember where she put things. It's hilarious." Everyone laughed. They actually laughed. At my sister, lying on the floor, treated like an animal. I still couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't process the horror of what I was witnessing. Then Linda's eyes fluttered open. She looked directly at me, and I saw recognition, confusion, hope. "Margaret?" Her voice was barely a whisper. That broke the spell. I took one step forward into the room, just one step, and everyone froze, because they recognized me. I watched it happen in slow motion. The guest closest to me, a young woman in an expensive dress, went pale. She whispered to the person next to her. That person's eyes went wide. "Oh my God," someone said. "That's Margaret Chen." "The Margaret Chen?" another voice asked. "From Chen Technologies?" "Holy shit, it is. I saw her speak at TechCrunch last year." The room went dead silent. Every person was staring at me, and then they looked at Linda, still lying on the floor in torn clothes. I saw the moment the realization hit them. This wasn't just some crazy maid. This was someone important. Someone connected to me. Someone they'd just watched being treated like garbage. Kevin's face had drained of all color. His drink was shaking in his hand. I looked at him. My voice was ice cold, containing a rage that was threatening to consume me. "Kevin, get my sister off the floor. Now." "Aunt Margaret, I can explain." "Get her off the floor." He practically threw his drink on a nearby table and scrambled to help Linda up. But his hands were shaking so badly he couldn't get a good grip on her. I pushed him aside and knelt beside Linda myself. Linda, it's Margaret. Can you hear me?" Her eyes tried to focus on me. She was groggy, her pupils dilated, clearly under the influence of something. "Margaret," she whispered. "You came? I thought." "Kevin said you didn't." "Shh. It's okay. I'm here now. I've got you." I helped her sit up. She was lighter than she should be. Malnourished. I could feel her ribs through the thin, torn fabric of her clothes. There were bruises on her arms, her face. I looked up at the room full of people. Everyone out, now. They didn't move fast enough. "Get out of this house." My voice, trained over decades to command boardrooms, echoed through the space. They scattered like cockroaches, grabbing coats and bags, fleeing out the door. Within seconds, the house was empty except for me, Linda, and Kevin. Kevin was backing toward the door. "Aunt Margaret." I swear this isn't what it looks like. Stay where you are. We're going to have a conversation. But first I'm calling an ambulance. She doesn't need an ambulance. She's fine. I pulled out my phone. She's malnourished, bruised, and clearly drugged out of her mind. If she's fine, then I'm a terrible judge of medical emergencies. And I don't think I am. The ambulance arrived in 8 minutes. During those 8 minutes I held Linda while Kevin paced the room making excuses. She really has been sick, Aunt Margaret. She started getting confused, forgetting things. The doctor said it was early onset dementia. He prescribed medications. What doctor? Just a doctor. I don't remember his name. You don't remember the name of your mother's doctor? It was at a clinic, one of those walk-in places. I examined the medication bottles I'd found on a nearby table. Powerful sedatives, antipsychotics, dosages that would render anyone non-functional. Kevin, these medications, even one of these would be a strong dose. Together they'd keep someone unconscious most of the time. The doctor said she needed them all. What doctor? Give me a name. Kevin? An address. Something. He couldn't, because there was no doctor. The paramedics arrived and I rode with Linda in the ambulance, holding her hand while they checked her vitals. Mom, one of the EMTs said quietly, I need to tell you this looks like elder abuse. We're mandated reporters. We have to notify authorities. Good, I said, because I'm planning to press every charge available. Kevin had tried to follow the ambulance, but I told him in no uncertain terms to stay away. If you come near her, I'm calling the police. Actually, I'm calling them anyway. Stay at that house. Don't leave. They'll want to talk to you. At the hospital, doctors examined Linda while I paced the hallway making phone calls. First, James Martinez, my head of corporate security. James, I need a full investigation. My nephew, Kevin Chen. I want to know everything about him. His finances, his activities, his friends, his habits. I want it by tomorrow morning. What's going on, Margaret? Elder abuse. My sister. Her son has been drugging her and God knows what else. I need ammunition to destroy him. Consider it done. Second, Patricia Kim, head of my legal team. Patricia, elder abuse case. My sister Linda is the victim. Kevin Chen is the perpetrator. I need criminal charges, civil suits, everything. I want him prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I'll assemble a team immediately. Third, my private investigator, someone I'd used for corporate espionage cases. Michael, I need you to get into a house and document everything before someone can destroy evidence. I gave him the address, photography, video, everything. There's evidence of elder abuse. I need it preserved. I'll need a warrant. I own the house. You have my permission as property owner. Get in there now, before Kevin realizes what's happening. Fourth, Police Chief Robert Morris. I'd met him at various business community events, served on a committee with him for downtown revitalization. Chief Morris, this is Margaret Chen. I need to report a crime. Elder abuse. My sister has been drugged and abused by her son for God knows how long. She's at Mercy Hospital now. Margaret, I'm so sorry. I'll send officers immediately. There's a house at 12047 Oak Street. That's where it happened. The perpetrator, Kevin Chen, is probably still there. I want him arrested tonight. We'll send a unit right away. Fifth, the hospital social worker. I need emergency guardianship over my sister Linda Chen. Her son Kevin has been abusing her. He has power of attorney, and I need that revoked immediately. He's dangerous. Let me get the paperwork started. I made all these calls in 15 minutes, pacing the hospital corridor, my voice sharp and commanding, brooking no delays or excuses. This is what 40 years of being a CEO had trained me for. Not just managing a company but deploying resources, organizing action, making things happen. And I was going to use every resource at my disposal to make sure Kevin paid for what he'd done. The doctor came out to talk to me after an hour. Miss Chen, I'm Dr. Williams. I've examined your sister. How is she? Physically, she's malnourished and dehydrated. She has bruises in various stages of healing, suggesting ongoing physical abuse. But the most concerning thing is the medications in her system. Tell me, she has extremely high levels of multiple sedatives and antipsychotics. The combination would make anyone appear mentally incompetent. Confusion, drowsiness, inability to concentrate or communicate clearly. Is she actually mentally ill? Does she have dementia? Dr. Williams shook his head. I see no evidence of dementia or organic mental illness. What I see is evidence of chemical restraint. Your sister has been drugged to keep her compliant and docile. The words hit me like physical blows. For how long? Based on her condition and the levels in her system, I'd estimate months, possibly longer. These aren't medications that build up quickly. This has been ongoing. I thought back to 6 months ago. Kevin had called me, sounding concerned. Aunt Margaret, I need to tell you something about Mom. She's been declining, getting confused, forgetting things. I took her to a doctor and he said it's early dementia. I'd been devastated. What can we do? The doctor prescribed some medications, but Aunt Margaret, she might need more care than I can provide. I'm doing my best, but this is really hard. I'd sent an extra $10,000 that month. For whatever you need. Medical care, home health aides, anything. And I trusted him when he said I shouldn't visit. It agitates her when people come. She gets confused about who they are. The doctor said it's best to keep her environment calm and stable. I'd accepted that, believed him, sent money and stayed away, while he drugged her and abused her and stole from her. Can she recover? I asked Dr. Williams. Once the medications clear her system, yes, there shouldn't be permanent damage. But she'll need time, a week, maybe more for all the drugs to metabolize. Keep her here, whatever she needs. I'll pay for everything, of course. And Miss Chen, I'm glad you found her when you did. A few more months of this and the malnutrition alone could have been fatal. I stayed with Linda while she slept. The IV dripped fluids and nutrients into her veins. Monitors beeped softly, tracking her vital signs. She looked so small in that hospital bed. My baby sister, 7 years younger than me, the little girl I'd taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, walked to school. I'd failed her. I'd been so focused on my company, my success, my empire that I'd sent money instead of time. I'd trusted a phone call instead of showing up in person, and Linda had paid the price. My phone buzzed. James, Margaret, I have preliminary findings. Tell me, Kevin Chen has been spending extravagantly. New BMW purchased 8 months ago for $85,000. Luxury watches totaling approximately $30,000. Designer clothes, expensive restaurants, trips to Vegas at least once a month. Where's the money coming from? Youth? The $5,000 per month you send for Linda's care? Based on property records and utility bills, her actual expenses are maybe $2,000 per month. Kevin's been pocketing the remaining $3,000. For how long? The house purchase was 3 years ago. If he's been doing this the whole time, that's $108,000 he's stolen. I did the math in my head. Over $100,000 of money I'd sent for Linda's care, used to fund Kevin's lifestyle. There's more, James continued. Kevin's been hosting parties at the house. Charging admission. We found social media posts advertising parties at the Chen mansion with $50 cover charges. He's been using Linda's house, my house, as a party venue, and there's evidence he's been dealing drugs at these parties. Small amounts, mostly marijuana and cocaine, but enough to be a felony. What else? Michael got into the house before the police arrived. He found Linda's living space. Margaret. She's been living in a closet, a bare mattress on the floor, no blankets, a bucket for a toilet. Meanwhile, Kevin's bedroom has a king bed, flat-screen TV, expensive furniture. I closed my eyes. Send me everything. Photos, financial records, all of it, already in your email. Margaret, there's one more thing. Michael found documents showing Kevin convinced Linda to sign power of attorney over to him 3 years ago, right after you bought the house. He's been controlling her money. What little she had, yes. Plus the monthly payments you send go into an account he controls. Everything clicked into place. Kevin had isolated Linda, drugged her, stolen from her and used her as a servant while living in luxury on my money, and I'd enabled it by sending money without checking on her personally. That ended now. Over the next few days while Linda remained in the hospital clearing the drugs from her system, I orchestrated Kevin's downfall with the precision of a military campaign. The police arrested him at the house that first night. The charges were extensive. Elder abuse, financial exploitation, false imprisonment, assault, drug dealing. He was released on bail, on $100,000 which apparently he had despite claiming to be broke. I made a note to find out where that money had come from. James's investigation revealed more damning details. Kevin had convinced Linda to sign power of attorney shortly after moving into the house. He told her it was just to make things easier, and that Margaret had suggested it. I'd never suggested any such thing. With the POA, Kevin had access to the monthly payments I sent. He'd also been forging Linda's signature to access what remained of her own savings from when her husband David died. Approximately $50,000 that was supposed to be her emergency fund. Kevin had drained it to $3,000. The private investigators' photos showed the full extent of the abuse. Linda's room, really a utility closet with a thin mattress, no furniture, no personal belongings. Her torn uniform, which Kevin had bought at a costume shop, making her dress as a maid. Photos of the parties showed guests stepping over Linda who appeared unconscious on the floor. In some photos people were literally using her as a footrest. The medications were from a shady doctor Kevin had found online, someone who'd write prescriptions for anyone willing to pay. That doctor was now also under investigation. Neighbors, when interviewed by police, reported seeing Linda outside occasionally looking disheveled and confused. When they'd asked Kevin about it, he'd said his mother had dementia and he was caring for her. Everyone had believed him. Because who would suspect a son of abusing his own mother? 4 days after Linda was admitted, she was finally coherent enough to talk. I was sitting beside her bed when her eyes opened, truly opened, focused and aware for the first time. "Margaret, I'm here, Linda. I'm right here. You came. You really came." Tears started rolling down her face. "I thought, Kevin said you didn't want to see me anymore. Said you were too busy, too important." "That's not true. That was never true. Linda, I sent money every month. I called Kevin for updates. I thought you were being cared for." "I wasn't." Her voice was small, broken. "He drugged me, Margaret. Made me take pills. So many pills. They made me so tired. Couldn't think. Couldn't move." "When did it start?" "After we moved into the house. About 3 years ago. At first it was wonderful. Kevin was so nice, so attentive. He said he'd take care of me, that I didn't need to worry about anything. Then one day he gave me a pill, said the doctor prescribed it for my memory. Said I'd been forgetting things, but I hadn't been. I wasn't forgetting anything, but I took it because he's my son. I trusted him, and it made me so sleepy. So confused. He kept giving me more pills. Different pills. Said they were all from the doctor. But they made me feel terrible, like I was in a fog, like nothing was real. And then he started making me clean, do his laundry, cook for his friends. He'd have parties and I'd have to serve drinks, serve food." Linda was crying harder now. "If I said no, if I said I was too tired, he'd give me more pills. Force them down my throat. Or he'd hit me." I held her hand, my own tears falling. "His friends would laugh at me, call me crazy, call me the maid. Sometimes Kevin would make me wear that uniform, the torn one, said it was funny. And Margaret, sometimes I'd wake up on the floor, with people stepping over me, on me. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. The drugs were so strong, I could hear them laughing but I couldn't do anything. I tried to stop taking the pills, hid them under my tongue, spit them out later, but Kevin caught me. He started crushing them into my food so I couldn't avoid them. I wanted to call you so many times, wanted to tell you what was happening, but Kevin took my phone, took my computer, said you didn't want to hear from me, that you'd told him you were too busy for family now."
Linda.
"I never said that. Never. You're my sister. You're the most important person in my life. He said you just sent money because you felt guilty, that you didn't actually care about me." "I cared. I care. I'm so sorry I didn't visit more. I'm sorry I trusted Kevin instead of seeing for myself." "You're here now," Linda whispered. "You saved me." 1 week after finding Linda, I called a press conference. Patricia, my lawyer, had advised against it. "Margaret, you don't need to do this publicly. We have enough evidence for prosecution. Going public could complicate the trial." "I'm not doing this for the trial," I said. "I'm doing it because elder abuse happens in silence. People don't talk about it, don't report it. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what happened to Linda." The press conference was held at Chen Technologies headquarters. Every major media outlet in the Bay Area sent reporters. Some national outlets showed up too. CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, because when Margaret Chen calls a press conference, people pay attention. I stood at the podium, Linda beside me. She looked so much better after a week in the hospital, clean, healthy, wearing nice clothes. I'd bought her, but you could still see the trauma in her eyes. "Thank you all for coming," I began. "I'm Margaret Chen, CEO of Chen Technologies. This is my sister Linda Chen." I paused, looking at the cameras, at the reporters, at the world watching. 3 weeks ago I drove to Linda's house to surprise her with a visit. What I found there horrified me. I described walking into the house. the party, the guests, and Linda lying on the doormat, wearing torn clothes, being treated like furniture. Her son, my nephew Kevin Chen, told the guests she was their crazy maid. People were wiping their shoes on her, using her as a footrest, laughing about her. The room was dead silent. Linda wasn't crazy. She was drugged. Kevin had been forcing her to take powerful sedatives and antipsychotics for 3 years. Medications that made her appear mentally incompetent. Medications that kept her docile and compliant so he could abuse her. I showed photos on the screen behind me. Photos the private investigator had taken. Linda's closet room. The medications, the parties with Linda unconscious on the floor. I heard gasps from the reporters. Kevin was supposed to be caring for Linda. I sent him $5,000 every month for her care, $60,000 per year, $180,000 over 3 years. Linda's actual expenses were about $2,000 per month. Kevin stole the remaining $108,000 to fund his lifestyle. New car, expensive clothes, trips to Vegas. He hosted parties at Linda's house. The house I bought for them and charged admission. He dealt drugs. He treated my sister as an unpaid servant while living in luxury on money meant for her care. Kevin is currently facing multiple felony charges: elder abuse, financial exploitation, false imprisonment, assault, drug dealing. He'll stand trial in 4 months. I looked directly into the cameras. I'm telling you this story not for sympathy, but to raise awareness. Elder abuse by family members is epidemic. According to the National Council on Aging, 1 in 10 Americans over 65 experience abuse, and most of it goes unreported. I found Linda because I showed up unexpectedly. But what about the thousands of elderly people whose families don't show up, who don't have resources to escape? Linda was rescued because she has a sister who's wealthy and powerful. But what about everyone else? That's why I'm announcing the creation of the Chen Family Protection Fund, a foundation dedicated to helping elderly people escape abuse, particularly abuse by family members. We'll provide emergency shelter, legal services, medical care, financial support, and counseling. We'll train social workers and law enforcement to recognize abuse. We'll advocate for stronger laws, because what happened to Linda happens to thousands of people every day. And it needs to stop. The press conference went viral. Within hours, clips were playing on every news channel. The image of Linda on that doormat, people stepping on her, became seared into the public consciousness. CEO's sister abused while son stole care money. Read the headlines. Margaret Chen exposes nephew's elder abuse, said another. Tech CEO goes public with sister's abuse story to raise awareness, was the CNN headline. The story had everything the media loved. A famous CEO, shocking abuse, a dramatic rescue, and a villain who was thoroughly unsympathetic. Kevin became the most hated man in America overnight. His social media was flooded with death threats. His face appeared on talk shows as an example of the worst kind of person. Memes spread showing him with text like Kevin Chen, proof that some people are just evil. His friends from the parties were identified and publicly shamed. Several lost their jobs when their employers saw them in photos stepping over Linda. The shady doctor who'd prescribed the medications had his license revoked and faced criminal charges. The house, my house, became a symbol. Photos of it appeared in every article, with Linda's closet room shown alongside Kevin's luxury bedroom. This is how the abuser lived while his victim slept on a closet floor. The captions read, "I didn't feel sorry for Kevin. Not even a little bit. He'd done this to himself." The trial began 4 months later. The prosecution had an overwhelming amount of evidence. Medical records showing the drugs in Linda's system. Financial records showing Kevin's theft. Photos and videos of the abuse. Testimony from neighbors, party guests, the investigating officers. In Linda's testimony, she took the stand on the 3rd day of the trial. I sat in the front row wanting her to see a friendly face. The prosecutor asked her to describe what had happened. Linda spoke clearly and calmly, her voice steady despite the trembling I could see in her hands. "My son Kevin started drugging me about 3 years ago. He told me the medications were from a doctor, that I needed them for my memory. But they weren't for my memory. They were to keep me quiet and controllable. He made me clean his house, serve his friends at parties. Sometimes he'd make me crawl on the floor while serving drinks because he said it was funny. He told his friends I was the maid. The crazy maid. People would step on me, use me as a footrest, wipe their shoes on me. I couldn't fight back because the drugs made me too weak. Kevin told me my sister didn't want to see me, that she was too busy and important for family. He took my phone so I couldn't call her. He isolated me so no one would know what was happening. I lived in a closet, slept on a bare mattress with no blankets, while Kevin slept in a luxury bedroom with furniture my sister's money had bought. I wanted to die, many times, but I couldn't even do that because the drugs made it impossible to think clearly enough to plan anything. She looked directly at Kevin, who was sitting at the defense table looking miserable. You're my son. I gave you life, raised you, loved you, and you repaid me by treating me like garbage. Like I wasn't even human. I hope you go to prison for a very long time. Not because I want revenge, but because other elderly people need to be protected from you, and from people like you. The defense attorney tried to cross-examine her, suggesting she was confused, that her memory was unreliable. Mrs. Chen, isn't it true that you were suffering from dementia, that you needed the medications? No, I never had dementia. The doctors at the hospital confirmed that. The only thing wrong with me was that I was being drugged against my will. But you signed power of attorney over to your son voluntarily, didn't you? He told me my sister suggested it. He told me it was just paperwork, that it didn't mean anything. I trusted him because he's my son. That was my mistake. Do you really expect this jury to believe that a son would abuse his mother this way? Linda looked at the jury. I didn't want to believe it either. But yes, that's exactly what happened. And I have the scars, physical and emotional, to prove it. Other witnesses testified over the next week. Neighbors, we saw Linda outside sometimes. She looked terrible, but Kevin told us she had dementia. We believed him. Party guests, testifying in exchange for immunity. Kevin told us his mom was crazy, that she liked sleeping on the floor. We thought it was weird, but we didn't question it. We should have. One guest, a young woman named Ashley, broke down crying on the stand. I wiped my shoes on her, on a human being. I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I laughed about it. I'm so sorry. Medical experts, the medications found in Linda Chen's system would render anyone non-functional. This wasn't medical treatment. This was chemical restraint for the purpose of control and abuse. Financial experts, Kevin Chen stole $108,000 from his aunt over 3 years. Money that was supposed to care for his mother. He used it for cars, watches, trips to Las Vegas, and funding drug dealing operations. The defense had nothing. They tried to paint Kevin as an overwhelmed caregiver who'd made mistakes under stress. The prosecutor destroyed that narrative by showing photos of Kevin's BMW, his Rolex, his luxury lifestyle. This is not an overwhelmed caregiver, she said. This is a predator who exploited his mother for profit and entertainment. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Margaret Thornton. She'd been a judge for 20 years and had a reputation for being tough on abuse cases. She addressed Kevin directly. Mr. Chen, I've been a judge for 2 decades. I've seen murderers, rapists, child abusers, every kind of criminal imaginable. But what you did to your mother is among the most disturbing cases I've ever encountered. You didn't just abuse her physically and financially. You destroyed her dignity. You made her into entertainment for your friends. You let strangers wipe their shoes on her like she was a doormat. You drugged her so heavily that she couldn't resist, couldn't escape, couldn't even think clearly enough to understand what was happening to her. And you did all this while stealing money from your aunt, money that was supposed to care for your mother. You stole over $100,000 meant for her care and used it to fund a lifestyle of luxury and excess. The cruelty of your actions shocks the conscience. Judge Thornton looked at the sentencing guidelines. The prosecution has asked for the maximum sentence. The defense has asked for leniency. I see no reason for leniency. Kevin Chen, you are sentenced to 15 years in prison for elder abuse, financial exploitation, false imprisonment, and assault. You will serve a minimum of 12 years before being eligible for parole. You are also ordered to pay restitution of $108,000 to your Aunt Margaret Chen, though I suspect you'll never be able to pay that amount. And I'm issuing a permanent restraining order. You are never to contact your mother again, not while she lives. If you attempt to contact her, you will face additional criminal charges. Bailiff, remove the defendant. Kevin was crying as they led him away. I'm sorry. Mom, I'm so sorry. Linda, sitting beside me, didn't react. Just watched him go with an expression I couldn't read. After he was gone, she whispered, he's not sorry he did it. He's sorry he got caught. There's a difference. 2 years have passed since that day. Linda lives with me now, in a beautiful guest house on my property in San Francisco. She has her own space, her own life, but we see each other every day. She's recovered completely. The drugs left no permanent damage. She's healthy, active, taking art classes and volunteering with the Chen Family Protection Fund. The foundation has helped over 500 elderly people escape abusive situations. We've provided legal assistance, emergency shelter, medical care, and financial support. We've trained hundreds of social workers and law enforcement officers to recognize signs of elder abuse, and we've lobbied for stronger laws. 3 states have passed new legislation increasing penalties for elder abuse by family members. 5 more states are considering similar laws. Linda speaks at the foundation's events, sharing her story with other abuse victims. I know what you're going through, she tells them. I was drugged and treated as a servant by my own son. I slept on a closet floor. I was used as entertainment at parties. I thought I'd never escape, but I did escape. Because my sister showed up. And you can escape too. We're here to help you. I've changed how I run my company. I reduced my hours, delegated more, made sure I have time for family. Because I learned the hard way that all the money and success in the world means nothing if you lose the people you love. Linda and I have coffee every morning on my patio. We talk about everything and nothing. We've become closer than we ever were before. Sometimes she talks about Kevin. Not often, but sometimes. Do you ever hear from him? I asked her once. He writes letters from prison. The guards forward them to my lawyer, who sends them to me. Do you read them? I read the first one. It said he was sorry, that he was addicted to gambling and drugs, that he never meant to hurt me. Do you believe him? I believe he's sorry. He's in prison. I don't believe he's sorry for what he did. If I hadn't been rescued, he'd still be doing it. Are you going to write back? No. I spent 3 years being drugged and abused by my son. I don't owe him anything. Not forgiveness. Not understanding. Not another chance. Some people tell me I should forgive him. That he's my son and blood is thicker than water. But you know what? He stopped being my son when he started treating me like an animal. I don't owe him forgiveness. And I'm done feeling guilty about that. I hugged her. You don't have anything to feel guilty about. He made his choices. Now he's living with the consequences. Last month I was invited to speak at a national conference on elder abuse. The conference was in Washington, D.C., held at a huge convention center with over 2,000 attendees. Social workers, law enforcement, medical professionals, advocates, policymakers. I was receiving an award for the foundation's work. Standing at the podium, looking out at the audience, I saw Linda sitting in the front row. She was smiling, proud, healthy, so different from the broken woman I'd found on that doormat 2 years ago. 2 years ago I began. I showed up unexpectedly at my sister's house. I walked in and found her lying on a doormat, wearing torn old clothes. People were wiping their shoes on her. Her son, my nephew, told the guests she was their crazy maid. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. I didn't scream. I took one step forward and everyone in that room froze. Because they recognized me. Margaret Chen, CEO of Chen Technologies. Someone with money and power and influence. And in that moment they realized, this crazy maid wasn't just a nobody. She was my sister, and they'd just witnessed her abuse by someone who would never let it slide. I used every resource I had to save Linda and destroy Kevin, my company's security team, my lawyers, my private investigators, my media connections, my business relationships. I called in every favor, used every bit of influence, made sure everyone knew what Kevin had done. He's now serving 15 years in prison. Linda is living her best life. But here's the thing that haunts me. Linda was only rescued because she had me, because she had a sister with resources. But what about the thousands of elderly people who don't have that? Elder abuse thrives in silence. It happens behind closed doors. Family members isolate their victims, drug them, steal from them, treat them like garbage, and no one knows. That's why the Chen Family Protection Fund exists. Because rescue shouldn't depend on having a rich relative. Every elderly person deserves protection. Every elderly person deserves dignity. Over the past 2 years, we've helped over 500 people escape abuse. We've provided legal services, emergency shelter, medical care. We've trained professionals to recognize warning signs. We've lobbied for stronger laws, but we're just getting started, because there are millions of elderly people being abused right now, in nursing homes, in private residences, by family members they trusted. We need to break the silence. We need to make elder abuse unacceptable. We need to prosecute abusers and protect victims. That's what power is for, not for making more money, or building bigger companies. for protecting people who can't protect themselves. I looked directly at the audience. If you work with elderly people as a social worker, a doctor, a nurse, a police officer, please watch for signs of abuse, weight loss, unexplained bruises, confusion that seems artificial, isolation, financial irregularities. If you see something, say something, report it, investigate it. Don't assume a family member is providing good care just because they're family. Kevin was my nephew. I trusted him. I sent him money to care for Linda. And he abused her for 3 years while I sent checks and believed his lies. I should have visited. Should have insisted on seeing Linda in person. Should have trusted my instincts when something felt off. Don't make the same mistake I did. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Act on it. The audience gave me a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, dozens of people came up to share their own stories. Elderly people who'd been abused, family members who'd rescued loved ones, professionals who'd seen abuse and intervened. You're giving voice to something that happens in the shadows, a social worker told me. Thank you. My mother was being abused by my brother, a middle-aged woman said. Your story helped me recognize what was happening and get her out. Thank you for speaking up. I work in elder law, an attorney said. Your foundation is doing incredible work. Please keep going. Linda stood beside me through all of it, shaking hands, sharing her own story, inspiring others. At one point she leaned over and whispered, "Thank you for saving me. You don't need to thank me. You're my sister. I should have been there sooner. You came when it mattered. That's what counts." This morning, Linda and I were having our usual coffee on the patio when she said something that surprised me. I got another letter from Kevin. Did you read it? I did. It was different from the others. He didn't ask for anything. Didn't beg for forgiveness. Just told me about his life in prison. He's working in the library, teaching other inmates to read. He said it's the first time in his life he's felt useful. Do you believe that? Linda was quiet for a long time. I don't know. Part of me wants to believe people can change. But part of me remembers lying on that doormat while people wiped their shoes on me. You don't have to forgive him. I know. And I don't. But Margaret, here's what I realized. Whether Kevin changes or not doesn't matter to me anymore. My healing doesn't depend on his redemption. I'm not waiting for him to become a better person so I can feel better about what happened. I'm already better. I've already healed. With or without him. That's powerful, Linda. It's freedom. For 3 years Kevin controlled my life. He drugged me, isolated me, abused me. My entire existence revolved around what he wanted, what he did. I won't give him that power anymore. Not even in my thoughts. He's in prison. I'm here living my life. That's enough. We sat in comfortable silence, drinking our coffee, watching the sun rise over San Francisco. I thought about the journey we'd been on. The horror of finding Linda on that doormat. The rage I'd felt. The satisfaction of watching Kevin get arrested, convicted, sentenced. But mostly I thought about this. Sitting here with my sister, both of us healthy and whole, having coffee and talking about the future. That was the real victory. Not Kevin in prison, though that mattered. The real victory was Linda's freedom. Her healing. Her life. I'm Margaret Chen. I'm 67 years old now. CEO of Chen Technologies. Worth over $500 million. Recognized wherever I go. But none of that mattered the day I found my sister lying on a doormat wearing torn clothes while people wiped their shoes on her. What mattered was that I had the resources to save her. The power to destroy the person who'd hurt her. The influence to make sure everyone knew what had happened. I used my wealth to hire lawyers and investigators. I used my connections to get police involvement. I used my media platform to expose Kevin and raise awareness about elder abuse. And I used my power to create a foundation that's helped hundreds of people escape situations like Linda's. That's what power is for. Not for making more money or building bigger empires. For protecting people. For fighting injustice. For making the world safer for those who can't protect themselves. My nephew Kevin tried to destroy my sister. He drugged her, abused her, stole from her, humiliated her. He treated her as less than human. He's serving 15 years in prison. Linda is free, healthy, thriving. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure what happened to her doesn't happen to others. Because when I walked into that room and everyone froze, it wasn't just because they recognized me as a CEO. It was because they realized they'd witnessed something terrible. And they were looking at someone who had the power to do something about it. I took that step forward. I used that power, and I'll never stop using it to protect people like Linda. That's my promise. That's my mission. That's my legacy. Not the company I built or the money I made, but the people I saved. Starting with my sister. And I wouldn't change a thing.